Are you a good speaker who wants to be great? Good news. This session was designed with you in mind. You may know our next speaker is a CSP, CPAE, and CAVIT award winner. She was NSA's first woman president. She's creator of Fripp virtual training, Powerful Persuasive Presentations, and the co-author of Deliver Unforgettable Presentations. In her career, she's delivered 3,500 live presentations and hundreds of virtual. What you may not know is that in 1986, in a nightclub called Pulsations, she made her entrance from a spacecraft that descended 4 floors down onto the dance floor. She stepped out wearing her custom-made Wonder Woman costume. She has proudly paid her NSA dues for 48 years. She built her speaking business when high tech was a bank ATM. She's the only NSA member to cut our founder, Cavett Roberts' hair, and he told everyone it was the best haircut he ever had. She loves NSA chapters, and since 1983 has spoken at close to 500 chapter meetings. Most of her work these days is coaching and speech writing for executives, engineers, sales teams, and some speakers to inspire action and commitment. To discuss how we can captivate your audience in the first 30 seconds, please welcome to a 4'11" giant who once chased a masked gunman in Golden Gate Park. Big round of applause for Patricia Fripp.
The email said, "Dear Patricia, I'm a big fan of yours. May I interview you for my blog?" Well, I don't know about you, but I am a short-term project person who was working on a large project, creating my online learning program, doing my very best to not be distracted. I wrote an email, I'm honored, I'm flattered, very busy, contact me in 3 months. And I thought, well, before I hit send, let me check his website. I'll let you enjoy that a bit longer. Naturally, I picked up the phone. Now that you realize how dreadfully shallow I am. And said, what is an Emmy Award-winning TV interviewer and game show host doing being my fan? After a 30-minute conversation, Todd Newton said, Patricia, this is great information. I have enough for at least 4 blog posts. But come on, tell me, what is the #1 secret of delivering a powerful, persuasive presentation? I said, oh, there's no one secret. And then I realized a brand new Frippicism was about to fall flawlessly from my lips. And I said, although there is no one secret, if there were, it would be that your subject is of interest to your audience. And you're wondering, well, how can I always guarantee it? Speak as an audience advocate. And remember, if we work on the premise that everyone is more interested in themselves than they are in us, we won't go wrong. And one way we can do that is to watch the I versus you and your ratio. Certainly, we're not going to talk and not say I. I recommend we all have a list of you-focused phrases that you can include. This is in the conversations to get the job as well as your presentation. Perhaps you agree. In your experience, have you ever you-focused phrases? You can feel confident. And then when you're going to tell your own story, invite them in. I wish you could have been there. Imagine how I felt when. So you focus phrases will prove that you are keeping your audience in mind. And of course, welcome to how to captivate your audience in the first 30 seconds. And not only are we captivating our audience at the beginning, we use many of the same techniques to transition into our next idea or chunk of content. And I believe the purpose of our opening is to arouse interest in our subject. And there are many ways. And in many openings, you use a combination of three. So the first one is a question. And if you, any part of your presentation, find yourself saying, "Have you ever stood up to speak and forgotten what you're going to say?" And the audience thinks, "Oh, yes, it was horrible, I lived through it." I suggest you add one word. How often have you walked on stage and forgotten what you're going to say? The assumption is if it's happened more than once, it will happen again, and your advice is going to now be more valuable. We can also use a rhetorical question. If I were to ask you, is 2025 the year you double the quality of your presentations? Perhaps you'd say yes. Perhaps you'd say no. Most likely you would say, Patricia, I would love it to be, can you tell me how? So the formula is yes, no, I would like it to be. And the secret is always put your name in it. Patricia, can you tell me how? Because I don't care how much they love us, most of the time, if we are not a celebrity, they do not remember our names. It's true. Then one of my all-time favorites, interesting statistics and little-known facts. With my engineers, I always pull out the most dramatic statistic and put it at the top to arouse interest in what will follow. The secret with an interesting statistic or little-known fact is you add an emotion. It might interest you to know. It might surprise you to know. It might please you to know. It might shock you to know. It might interest you to know that in my walk-on music, David Bowie's Heroes, that was my brother, Robert Fripp, playing the guitar. It might surprise you to know he flew from New York to Berlin, got in a taxi, went straight to the studio, said to David Bowie, "Play me what you've recorded." And what you hear on the album is his first improvised take. That is mastery, which is what he talked about at the winter workshop when NSA rocked. Speakerpalooza, which was Brian Walter's name. Is Brian here? Wave. Well, Brian it comes up with Speakerpalooza, but that was a great session. It might please you to know that based on 48 years and my very extensive informal research, 98.2% of NSA members will tell you if you attend the conferences, get involved in your chapter, you will cut minimum 5 years off your learning curve. And it might shock you to know that 94% of inmates on death row do not believe they're responsible for what put them there. Then transport your audience. This is time travel. And we can transport our audience to the past, or we could take them into the future. If we take them to the past, it might be, let's go back to the end of World War II. Or, who amongst us will forget January 2020? Or, our combined story began in the early 70s in Phoenix, Arizona, when Cavett Robert and a group of speakers sat around a lunch table and all wrote a $500 check they put in the middle of the table to start NSA. And no, they never asked for their money back. I know because I had dinner with two of them, Rita Davenport and Tommy Hopkins, in January. Good. So you transport the audience, then if you want to include them in your story, you can transport them to the past by saying, I wish you could have been there. Or, can you imagine how I felt when? You're bringing the audience into your experience. When you transport them to the future, you are using a phrase that usually begins with imagine. Imagine. It is March the 8th, 2026. And as you're getting ready to go out for your speaking engagement, you realize it's the highest fee you've ever been paid. Your clothes cost more than you ever dreamed of spending. And as you reflect on what made this such a good day, you remember to March the 8th, 2025, when you attended the Thrive Conference. So you see, if you take your audience to the future that's successful, then teach them what you're teaching them, and then at the end bring it back and say, will that picture be a reality? It depends on the actions you take. And then get into the scene late. This is a technique that comes from my friend Michael Haig, who is a story consultant in Hollywood. And he says, Patricia, most speakers spend too much time getting into the story. You have to get into the scene late. That's very much what I did with the email said. You get straight to the action. Imagine I am telling a story that begins, Mary had a problem. Now, what are you thinking? Who's Mary? What's her problem? Then you give the backstory. Mary was a seasoned HR professional. For 20 years, she'd run HR departments in the most prestigious companies in Silicon Valley. Now, what do you know that I don't have to tell you? Mary eats problems for lunch. Mary gets invited to SHRM, the HR association, to run panels and give speeches on solving HR problems. Next line. Dan walks in and says, Mary, we're about to be sued for $28 million, and I think it was my fault. In 2008, Dan Thurman ran a magnificent performance lab in Las Vegas. And he invited all the creative people that we would love to meet, like producers of a Cirque du Soleil, screenwriters. Rich Little opened with famous people I know and have been. And one of the screenwriters on the second day gave us the simple formula that all Hollywood blockbusters follow. And it works in our stories. A day in the life. Every movie you are introduced to the protagonist, the hero, the person that you see the story through their eyes. So Mary had a problem. Now you know her backstory. That's the day in the life. And then in a movie, something happens. That is the inciting incident. In our stories, that's where Dan walks up walks out and says, we're being sued. And in a movie, it's the result of that is and the result of that is, which is exactly the same in our stories and our speeches. Then, once in a while, we have to perhaps introduce ourselves or our roles. The first scientist I ever coached was my next-door neighbor, Mike Powell. This was in the 90s. He was a senior scientist at Genentech. And he was working on developing an AIDS vaccine. And I said, Mike, I'd like to invite you to speak to my professional women's organization about the work you're doing developing the AIDS vaccine. But understand, we don't spend time with scientists, and even if we did, we probably wouldn't know what they were talking about. At the beginning of your presentation, I want you to let us know, what is it like being a scientist? And what he said was, being a scientist is like doing a jigsaw puzzle in a snowstorm at night, when you don't have all the pieces and you don't have the picture you're trying to create. What he did, and this is a suggestion as you're writing out the opening of your speech, very much like your introduction, one line at a time. Because what made his opening, and he wrote it, not me, was short phrases that builds a rhythm. Remember, the spoken word is for the rhythm. The written word is for the eye, but the spoken word is for the rhythm. Short phrases and visual words. We use words to communicate. However, very often our audience sees what we say. And then at the end of his presentation, I said, Mike, see if you can do a circular technique. Bring back the frustration of being a scientist. And he said, at the beginning of my presentation, you heard the frustration of being a scientist. So many people ask, why would you do it? Last story. It was the 4th day of a medical conference. We'd been in the same hot, dark room since 7:30 in the morning. The last speaker of the day walked to the stage, a young woman none of us recognized. She said, I'm a 32-year-old mother of 2. I have AIDS. Please work fast. A standing ovation from the first presentation he gave to a lay audience. Now, as you heard in my introduction, I have a certain affection for NSA chapters. And as I usually do, after I teach some techniques, I bring people up for my razor-focused mini-coaching. And in one chapter, a woman walked up and said, my dad walked into a diner, looked at the waitress, and thought, that's my wife. In 1946. I said, I'm sure this is a great story, and perhaps that was your parents, who knows? But I said, you need to reorganize your words. Here's a Frippicism. 99% of the time, any unit of time is a setup phrase, not an impact phrase. What is most important comes at the end. So I said, you need to begin your story in 1946. Your scene in your mind of the diner changes. And you do not have to have been born in 1946 to know that was the end of World War II. You've heard stories from your parents, your grandparents. Maybe you learned in history at school. You've seen movies. And because it's 1946, I relate to her father as a soldier. I think he's in uniform. And so I attribute Everything I feel about my Uncle Bill, who was in the RAF and got shot down on October the 16th, 1939, and spent the entire war in prisoner of war camps. So I know, thinking about her father, he will never talk to his parents, his future wife and children, or his civilian friends about what happened. I know. Now, because I think he's a soldier, now remember, all she said was, in my version, she would have said, in 1946, my dad. All this is going on in my mind. So I'm rooting for her dad. Whatever he wants, I want him to get, because he's a hero. He walks in the diner. Now, I don't know about you, but I think if he's alone, he walks in a diner and he sits at the counter. And the waitress comes over and says, "Would you like some pie and coffee, honey?" And he thinks, that's my wife. Now, can you understand? That's my wife is the punch word, not in 1946. So time is a setup phrase. Here's the formula. When, where, who, what happened. What happened is most important. Everything is setting the scene. If you were here last year, the opening speaker was Scott Halford. And I called him a month ago and said, "Do you mind if I tell the story about when we first met?" And he said no. This would have been the early 90s at a performance lab in the headquarters in Phoenix. And it was a speaker lab. We were trying to improve. And Scott Halford stood up on Friday and said, "When I was a little boy, I was always fascinated with documentary films. And I was encouraged by my parents, and all the courses I took in school and college drove me to this goal, and I was so lucky. I got a job with this documentary film company. And we had many fun assignments, and one, we made a documentary about being on death row. And I went in, I was in death row for 6 days, and I even sat in Sparky, the electric chair. Well, afterwards, he said, "Patricia, can you give me any feedback?" And I said, "Do you mind if I do it in my presentation tomorrow?" So this is what I suggested he do. My ankles, legs, waist, chest, arms, wrists were strapped to the chair. The wet sponge was put on my forehead and scalp. The skull cap electrode was put on my head. My eyes were covered. There I was, strapped into Sparky, the electric chair. Now, what would the audience be thinking? He looks so respectable. What did he do? How did he get out? The purpose of your opening is to arouse interest in your subject. So let us review. Get into the scene late. Get to the point. We can never forget that the audience is more interested in themselves than they are in us, so use you-focused language. We can use a question, a rhetorical question, an interesting statistic, a little-known fact, and add an emotion. We can transport the audience to the past or the future. And, of course, Michael, think of this as a movie. Introduce a day in the life, something happens, and the result of that is. Then, telling stories. telling stories. You can tell them from the beginning, the middle, or the end, just like in movies. And remember the rhythm and picture words. Remember when you use the when, where, who, what happens, you help the audience see, just as Scott does when he opens his presentation. Now, if anybody knows me and my friends, they all know I am on a crusade to bring more specific language to our everyday lives and certainly on the stage. I feel like I am failing miserably, but I keep trying. So as I have your attention, there is one comment I must make. My most frequently asked questions of all my clients, if it were not a thing, what would it be? One of my brilliant engineers said there are two things people love about. I said, if they weren't things, what would they be? Innovative upgrades. I said, there are billions of people in the world. What people love your innovative upgrades? He said, systems administrators. I said, who's in your audience? 90% systems administrators. Now, this is how you can help brilliant people just by looking at the quality of their words, even though I don't understand the depth of what they're talking about. But is it a thing or is it a technique, a strategy, a habit, a discipline, your opinion, an idea, a suggestion? Remember the idea of the quality of words. I was coaching a woman a lawyer. Her speech was on modern-day slavery. And one of the lines in the context of a story was, he promised her many things. I said, no, he didn't. He promised her a life of romance and adventure. Those two words give you more information than it takes to say them. And in the context of the story, you understand why a young woman would leave the safety of home and go off with this man. I challenge you to look at the quality of your words. And now we get to a very popular part of programs, the razor-focused mini-coaching. Now, before you all leap to your feet and run to this side of the stage, understand you might only deliver one line. You might deliver 5 lines. And I suggest we have intermediate speakers, because if I ask you to repeat what you said, you need to be able to tell me word for word what you said before. So you can't be making it up when you walk up. Is that a deal? So you need to know, and I will hand you the mic, which is what I consider living on the knife edge of now, because you never know what's going to happen, which makes it so thrilling. So I hand you the mic. I will ask you your name and what your subject is. Not the title, not a paragraph. My title was captivate your audience in the first 30 seconds. What my topic is presentation mastery. So you see, if you need a paragraph, you don't understand your subject. So I'll ask you your name. What are you talking about? I will mention your name, and the audience will give you 1 clap. We don't have time for long applause, even if it's your best friend. 1 clap. And you will speak in the very best way you can till I say stop, or touch your shoulder, which means I have a suggestion. Now, based on that, could we have 7 people who are willing volunteers to stand here? Now, if we don't get to you all, I'll see you at lunch or at the party. So I'll help everyone. All right. Would you like to come up, sir? So let us tell, thank you. Let us tell the world who you are. You are, of course, Jim. We have met. Yeah. Good. So not yet.
But thank you.
Your enthusiasm, hold it. And your subject or topic is?
The power of emotions and experience.
All right, good. And what is the result of that?
It's a fuel for growth.
Good. Perfect. I'm handing you the mic, as you would if this was your audience. Your name is in lights. Here's Jim.
You should have been with me there years ago. We were working with the chemical company Dow.
Okay.
Got several words out.
Good. Now, can you remember exactly what you said?
Wish you'd been with me there years ago when we worked with chemical. Nope.
Okay. All right. Well, one, I'm going to suggest you slow down and write your script down the page. So I'm going to hand you back the mic, and you're going to slow down slightly, say what you were saying, but when I touch you, you're going to pause. All right? Here's Jim.
I wish you'd been there with me.
I wish you'd been with me then. There are too many words. Somehow that doesn't. How about, if you're taking them, the assumption is you're probably there with them. Okay. So just say, I wish you could have been there.
Okay.
Pause. Let the audience think, oh, where are we going? Right? Here's Jim.
I wish you could have been there with me.
No.
No?
These people are very brave to come up here. And do you see how difficult it is to change what you always do? I wish you had been there. There. I think we know you're taking us somewhere. I wish you'd been there. 1, 2, 3. Give them time to think. Where are we going?
I wish you'd been there. Oh. I felt the tap. I met with Dow's chief product officer.
Okay. As we walked into the room, now, is this a what's the room like?
It's a 2-person room. His office.
Okay. Is it a big office, a little office?
Big office.
All right. Is it a luxurious office?
It is.
Good. You realize the adjectives you use help us see the office. Because we've gone into so many different offices. What type of office? So, I wish you'd been there. As we, or now you can say, I wish you had been with me as I walked into such and such's luxurious office. Right, then pause. All right, here's Jim.
I wish you'd been there. I walked into Dan Futter's big, beautiful office, and I was talking to him about our work on a complaints journey.
All right. Now, the next technique is you don't talk about what you said. You deliver the dialogue. It's going to have quotation marks. And use his name first. Then it's very obvious to the audience and you who is speaking. So pick it up with, I walked into his office.
I walked into Dan Futter's office, the chief product officer at Dow. And he told me, Jim, my goal is to create a complaints journey that's enjoyable.
Perfect. Would you? Very good.
Thank you.
Can you see the difference? Slow down, take out words you don't need, add dialogue and descriptive words. Give Jim a hand. Thank you. All right, thank you. Wonderful, my dear. And your name is?
My name is Caitlin Gardner.
All right, I can only remember one word. Okay, Caitlin, and your topic is?
Effective communication.
Perfect. Then you fit right in.
Great.
Here's Caitlin.
I am Caitlin Gardner, the owner of Blooming Communications, and we help companies grow through effective communications.
Okay, stop there. We do introduce ourselves. I would say something about them that they care who you are. What is your most, why do your clients hire you?
Well, I'm trying to figure that out.
Okay.
Thank you. But to help them with public relations.
Okay.
Public
All right.
relations.
All right. How about this? People do business with people they know. People do business with people who do business with them. And more often, people do business with people they read about.
Well, write that down.
If you are looking to have more impact, in whether it's all right, so take that and then see how you would explain what you do if you want to be seen. Here's Caitlin.
Imagine being in the news and having your brand in the headlines. That's the power of public relations. Okay.
Good.
Good.
Now, so be more specific.
Imagine seeing your brand name or your personal brand in the center of the Wall Street Journal or People magazine.
I think we all need to learn to pause. And I'm not saying don't move. Okay. However, at the beginning, stand still, because how you stand, this represents the stability of your message, the stability of your company. Do not distract from your own words with unnecessary movement. So you can then step into, and this is what we do, but at the beginning, stand still. Here's Caitlin.
Imagine seeing your brand or personal name in the Wall Street Journal or People magazine or a trade association that you're familiar with. That's what we do at Blooming Communications. We help companies grow. Your responsibility is to plant the seeds. My responsibility is to dig in and find the story.
Perfect. So add more pauses to that to sink in. It'll be wonderful. Thank you. Great. Tell your friends, I've been hypnotized and I can't wait to do it again. All right, my darling, thank you. Let's see, you are Jamie?
Yes, you have to say the last name to see if they react to it. Can I try it?
Jamie Marco?
Let's try this again. Marco!
You're famous. You're famous, good. Yeah. All right, Jamie, and your topic is?
The power of your attitude.
Okay, good. All right. Here's Jamie.
Imagine waking up in the morning and waking up late. Then imagine not getting coffee, having nothing to eat, and having to get to the airport.
All right. Now, this is a question. If you say, and this is, you do research with your friends. If you say, imagine waking up, do you assume it's the morning? Then you don't need to tell them it's the morning. Jerry Seinfeld said, I consider it a good day's work when I can cut a 5-word sentence or an 8-word sentence down to 5. In his case, it's funnier. In our case, it's more memorable. Imagine waking up. So let's do this a sentence at a time, all right? Here's Jamie.
Imagine waking up late in the morning, not a chance to get coffee.
Okay. Imagine waking up late, no time for coffee. This is a day in this life, all right? All right. And what I'm going to do is suggest you stand still until you now move to the next action. Here's Jamie.
Imagine waking up late. No time for coffee, no time to eat. And you have to get to the airport as fast as possible. You're now angry and hungry, which makes you what? Angry. Exactly. And I remember my most recent time doing just that. I rushed to the Tampa International Airport trying to get to my flight.
Good. Now, what I'm going to suggest, this is good. So you see, at the beginning, slow down slightly because we all have accents to somebody. When they get used to the sound of our voice, that's fine. But when you're rushing to the airport, you still need to have pauses. But you can race to the airport because race is a visual word. So then you would speed up slightly because the audience is then with you. All right? Thank you. Good job. See, hypnotizing is fairly painless. Okay. All right. Hello, my dear. Let's swivel you around.
Thank you.
If I had talent, I could swivel. Casey. Okay, Casey from New Jersey. And your subject, you got fans. Good. And your subject is?
Empathy in the workplace.
Here's Casey.
You invited me here today to share my insights about empathy in the workplace.
Okay. Good. They're an intelligent audience, so you understand there's nothing wrong with any of these. We're just putting every word under the magnifying glass and get a closer look. They're an intelligent audience. They know it's today. So you've just taken off. Today, I tell you, today and thing are the two most overused, impact-diluting words in the English language. And what I would suggest is that you say something of interest first about your subject and then say, thank you for the invitation to discuss how this applies to you. So what is your version of a Frippicism? What is one of your most dramatic, your $100 line?
Let me tell you what empathy is not.
Okay. Then, remember, we're going to make it about them. So, you might be curious what empathy is not. You might be curious what empathy is not. Thank you for the invitation too. Okay. Yes. Here's Casey.
You might be curious about what empathy is not. Thank you for the invitation. That day, I did everything wrong. I ran for the train. I did not have breakfast. And by the time I looked up, it was 3 p.m, and every one of my direct reports had come to me with an issue to solve. And I had no fuel whatsoever.
right, good, good. So what was different? The opening line, what did we do? We made it about them, not, you might be curious, not I'm going to tell you. You is the magic word. Then, thank you for the invitation. And I think the next line is, thank you for the invitation to discuss, and then you talk about how to be a great communication workforce. I didn't always know what you're about to learn. Then you step this side, because as the audience looks at you, that's the past. So you step this side. Now, because you're now there as the expert, I want you to put this into context. So you say it was earlier, because we don't want, you see, if you're an expert, you don't want them to let them think it might be yesterday. Yeah. And I didn't always know this. Let's go back to 1998. There I was running my own such and such a business with a staff of 16. And this particular Monday, I had not had a good night's sleep. The alarm was late, but yeah, okay. And that was the day I realized something had to change. And what you're about to learn is the 6-step process that I went through to take my frazzled, unhappy, miserable staff who spent 70% of their time looking for their next job to be my #1 supporters. Okay? No. Thank you. Thank you. You can kiss me later, not when I got my makeup on stage. Come on down. Now, I hope you were seeing our brave friends here are helping remind us of techniques you may or may not know or you've forgotten. All right, good. Would you like to join my organization, Short Women to Rule the World? Okay, good. Lisa.
You are way taller than me, so you're good.
Okay, thanks. All right, so Lisa from Wayne, Pennsylvania, and what is your subject?
Loving yourself first, most, and always.
Oh, very nice. That's a woman who lives her brand. Okay. Back here. Back. That little cross means don't go in front of it.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
And if you do a good job visualizing, when you paint the scene, they will see you at the edge with your words. You don't have to be right in front.
Better.
One of my great speech coaches, Ron Arden, years ago, he came from a theatrical background, and he said, Patricia, because I was exactly the same. You want to get as close to the audience. He said, Patricia, bring the audience to you. Don't keep going out to them. Bring them to you. And with your words, we can see you standing at the top of a mountain or falling off the edge of the stage with your words. All right, so come back here. All right. Here's Lisa.
It's a beautiful fall day in 1981.
Now, this is a theatrical choice, but my bias is keep the past in the past. You say, it is, and you take us to a date that's in the past. So I would just say, rather than it is, it was.
It was.
Okay?
Got it.
Keep the tenses the same, at least in the same sentence. Here's Lisa.
It was a beautiful fall day in 1981. I was standing on a bridge in Ithaca, New York. The sun was warm, the air was crisp. The birds were singing in the distance. I was overlooking Fall Creek Gorge, wanting to jump. Desperately wanting to jump. I was in my first year at Cornell University.
Okay, good. Now, can you see that's good? And did she need to be standing on the end? So all we're going to do is keep the tense in the past, and can you see by standing still, it's adding to the drama? Every word counts. And that magnificent long pause that many people are very uncomfortable with, but the audience is building the drama. We are feeling the feelings you have. If you kept talking, we wouldn't get it. So I think you're doing a great job. That's all you have to do. Thank you. Appreciate it. Good. All right, who's the next hypnotizing person? All right. Good. More short. Okay, good, very, all right, good. Sharon from, okay, Raleigh. Okay, Sharon. And your subject is?
Making your words matter.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Here's Sharon.
It was June 2021. I was in an outdoor coffee shop because it was COVID. My phone rings, and I'm in a meeting, so I hit ignore. Later that morning.
Now, this is so nitpicky. We're in the past, and it rings. Now, I would say it rang.
Okay.
Just to keep the tenses the same. All right? All right, so you say it rang.
The phone rang. I didn't recognize the number, so like many of you, I hit ignore.
Okay. Now again, this is very nitpicky, but the difference between good, great, and mastery is so tiny. The secret of connecting to an audience is you talk to one person 300 times, you don't talk to 300 people. So you say, just like you, I ignored it. And everyone hears Sharon is talking to me. It's true. Because you don't care about the person sitting next to you, even if it's your best friend, as much as you care about you. You want Sharon to talk to you. Right. So just like you, not all of you.
Okay.
Just like you.
Yeah. Oh, gotcha.
ignored it.
Okay.
Right? Pick it up there.
Just like you, I hit ignore. Later that morning, I listened to the voicemail. Sharon, this is Eva Kemp calling from the White House Office of Communications. We received your letter to the president. He's coming to Raleigh at the end of the week, and we were wondering if you'd like to meet him.
All right. Good. This is very good. Very, very good. So only these tiny little nitpickies. Now, what you could do, and I'm not saying you have to do it, but it's fun to mix it up a little, and it helps you fall in love with your own content again. So what I would like you to do at some point with your pals, begin with, the voicemail said, so just for fun, and we're running out of time, so we can't do it here, but if you think about, if that was your opening line, the White House said, see me later in the day. All right, good, thank you, thank you. Now, we're really on our deadline, so this will be very short and sweet. Thank you, and you're in it. Okay, Stacy, your subject is?
Doing customer experience right.
Okay. Here's Stacy.
Think about the last time you had a really bad customer experience. A company that made it so frustrating, impacted your time, impacted something meaningful to you. Frustrating. Well, now, hold on to that feeling and let me ask you, is that what your customers feel?
Okay, good. So I like your idea. I like your ideas, and it's fine. And you probably would in real life, but you do a good. I think you could probably, if you had it scripted, edit the words down to a few less, and then pause and wait and change the way you say. Do your customers feel like that? Or, but I like where you're going. I like where you're going. This is not stage, but on stage, and I only bring this up. Women don't show your toes on stage. Because the women will say, oh, look, I like that polish. Or, don't. Everything we do adds to or distracts from our message. But you didn't know you were coming on stage. Congratulations. All right, good. All right. My darling, I don't think you are an intermediate speaker. I think you're a superstar. This is who I think it is, isn't it? Yes. The first time we met, he came up and whisked me off my feet on the dance hall. But no, I'll grab you late. I grab you later, but my time is okay. Oh, thank you. Well, it's one way to get a date with a cute guy later. Right. 48 years, so many wonderful memories. And I'm going to take you back to the 2000 convention. We all come to NSA different ways. I was a hairstylist, traveling nationwide for a hair product company, speaking to hairstylists, and speaking to Rotary clubs to promote my business. Who knew 8 years later I'd be national president? Only in America and NSA. And in the 2000 convention, which was spectacular, 60 Minutes came. And they filmed 5 days of absolutely fabulous programs, Zig Ziglar, Tommy Hopkins, and all we mere mortals were standing in line during the breaks to be interviewed. And as I was standing there, I knew if I have any chance of not being on the cutting room floor, I had to make a comment that was short and pithy, perhaps amusing, shorter than a tweet, even though Twitter wasn't invented. I could tell you what I said, but you'd probably rather watch and hear what I said.
This former hairdresser, like others in the trade, is a born talker.
When I was a hairstylist, I worked on the outside of people's heads. Now, as a motivational speaker, I work on the insides of their heads. There's only half an inch difference.
That line got me on 60 Minutes. That half inch has made me millions of dollars. Not all in the same year. There are so many memories in 48 years, including, where is Shep hiking? All right. When Shep had hair, he cut me into 3 pieces. As for your entertainment, as you can see, he put me back together very well. However, when it's damp, I still have a slight limp. 20 years ago, 20 years ago, Jane Fonda said, I have now entered the 3rd act of my life. And the 3rd act makes sense of the first 2. And obviously, I am in my 3rd act. And I appreciate the opportunity to still contribute. I hope some of my ideas have been helpful to you. I haven't finished. At the beginning of my presentation, you heard my most frequently used opening. What I would like to do is close with my all-time favorite that I only used once. I was booked to deliver a 3-hour program on the last day of a conference for 350 Seventh-day Adventist pastors. The topic was how to design and deliver a more charismatic sermon. And what we have a tendency to forget as non-celebrities, that people look at the program and they think, she's the only person on the program who isn't a minister. How can anyone who isn't a minister tell me how to write a better sermon? I write one every week. I bet she isn't even a Seventh-day Adventist, which I'm not. Can you understand how your opening word choices could build credibility? I walked on stage and said, 465 times in the Bible, it said it came to pass. It did not say it came to stay. And unless your sermon is well constructed, artfully crafted, and charismatically delivered, it will not come to stay in the hearts, minds, and lives of your congregation. And if you have never heard 350 people shout out, "Amen, hallelujah," after your opening remarks, perhaps you should revisit your opening. Thank you.